his implementation of what he wanted to establish amongst his people kind of spoke louder because he was more of a practitioner of that mission.
Are you familiar with this guy named Charleston White?
Yeah, I've seen some of the stuff in him on the internet.
So he creates a lot of different antics, a lot of comments, but according from him, his motive is to somewhat combat against what hip hop has become, and even kind of also shame things that are hurting the community, like dealing drugs of that nature. So he's going hip hop and drug dealing. It's his kind of space.
For me, I'm Muslim, so we have an authentic, prophetic tradition where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he said, "Innamal a'malu binniyat." Verily intentions are followed. Actions are followed by intentions. Wa innama kulli imri'in ma nawa, and every man get back what he intends. So I believe that when you look at the situation from this individual's lens, because I'm not a study on none of these guys, to be honest with you. So, I'm not going to say anything that's not a reality of mine. Is that you can't overlook the fact that these individuals are in position of influence. And there's no way to tarnish that, rip that down under the pretense that you want to rebuild or build. Because if they are a part of those pillars, then the empowerment comes from forging allegiances with those individuals, educating them in the process so that they understand your goals and your objectives to empower the community takes precedence over everything else that they're doing. But you can't go into certain situations intending to build by destroying something that's, actually coincides with the remedy that you're trying to acquire. So like with me, I don't listen to music. I haven't listened to music for 14 years. I take my religion very serious. But I can hold a conversation in any relevant space. You know what I'm saying? Because I haven't alienated myself from people in the music business. I haven't alienated myself from the culture. It's just that I have a different lifestyle. I have different life choices. I have different things that I do that may not coincide with everything that's present in that business. Right. But the people, they're still people. Right. And they're still in positions of influence. And a lot of the youth, my children included, look to these guys hoping to acquire some, understanding, attraction, all kinds of things, are expected when they look at, artists, entertainers, athletes, so on and so forth. So it's like, if you look at people in the past, like Malcolm X, how he befriended Muhammad Ali, it was instrumental in teaching Muhammad Ali, about, at the time, the Nation of Islam, which is not Islam. But at that time, it was perfect timing to have, a black nationalist group that was growing, trying to empower people and have, people of color look at themselves with more dignity and honor. So he didn't try to tear down Cassius Clay. He was trying to build up Muhammad Ali. You know what I'm saying? And that's the same approach you got to take when you're trying to utilize or leverage the influence that they have over the masses, right, to try to give them a message. Teach them what, what's going to be more impactful than what they've already established through their talent. Right. And I think that, if more of us did that and not make these, attempts to try to even if your intentions is pure, doesn't mean that the outcome is going to be what you want.
Right. Yeah. And that's a great perspective, because this gentleman, Charleston, is going at it a certain way where it's very vicious, but his intentions, from what he's articulated, means well, because he wants to see hip-hop's direction change. Now, you mentioned Malcolm X. Malcolm did a lot of work in New York, and particularly Harlem. Why do you think people gravitated towards Malcolm X over Martin Luther King? And one, I guess, would represent New York and one would represent the South, kind of what we talked about.
I think that their presence speaks to what I was saying about the differences in the lifestyle and the circumstances that were, upon the people in the South and people in the North. I think that Malcolm X, he had a foundation that was established upon a belief, but his implementation of what he wanted to establish amongst his people kind of spoke louder because he was more of a practitioner of that mission, opposed to, I think, Martin Luther King being more, Christian based or church based.
Yeah.
And it seemed like, a reflection of what everyone already knew about the church.
Right.
And the community revolved around the church.
Right.
So it was no way to kind of separate Martin's intentions or mission away from the foundation of it, which was, Christian based. But with Malcolm, it was a certain type of militance. It was a lot of different lessons and, knowledge based factors that tied into his speech and how he conducted himself, saying in the media and so on and so forth. He was a lot more firmer.
Yep.
And he was speaking exactly how the people were feeling. I think Martin Luther King, he was a benefit for, people of color at that time as well. But I think he spoke more from a more humbling, more passive kind of speech or tone that made people choose. Do I want to be at the forefront of, revolting?
Yeah.
Or do I want to be patient and wait? So I think that was kind of how
it's a great two different energies.
Yeah, that's what, and I think that people of color looked at both of their missions, as having the same value, so to say. But I think people chose between which outcome they wanted.
One was a demand and the other one was a request.
Request, exactly. Perfectly said. Like,